Why am I sitting?
Because I wanted to show you something. This was sent in. I go back to Friday's show, and you were saying something about how you wanted to comment on Drew Brees.
Yeah.
And my buddy had the closed captioning running, and you wanted to comment on boobies.
Are you sure that's not what Dan said?
You said Drew Brees.
So Drew Brees is boobies on closed caption?
Apparently, when you said it on Friday, it was.
Do I?
Hey, I want to comment on Drew Brees.
Yeah.
When everything's going on.
The mic is on. There's no battery in here.
Oh boy.
There. Is that better? Yay! Got it. So boobies.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Drew Brees apparently.
Now,
Boobies.
if I say Drew Brees quickly, does it Drewbies?
Well, Mario said he went and listened back, and it does kind of sound like you say boobies.
Now, do you have to? You're gonna have to clarify.
Did
the
you
statement.
lead hour 3 by saying when everything that's going on in the country, I want to talk about boobies? I swear to God, I remember that.
It's
We've
possible.
done that before.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do this next segment on boobies if you want. I'm happy to.
So
Todd just got in.
So I
too,
said
Works- that works perfectly.
Drewbies. Movies.
Drewbies.
Droopies.
Drewbies.
You almost have to address this.
Look how serious you look, too.
I know. And rightfully
Yeah,
so.
I need to discuss
Who knows what's on the
boobies
screen
right
there?
now. Hold
Okay.
on, I've got something on my mind. I just
I gotta get this off.
need to address this. I can't go on any longer.
You should have your buddy do this. This is
Boobies.
This is amazing.
Have we had anything else? That, I mean,
Likely.
Yeah, I wonder.
That's why
I just
I'm like,
wondered.
why stop here?
Likely.
Who knows what? I wonder if I said something about boobies, would it come up Drew Brees? Hey, I saw this movie, and you wouldn't believe the boobies.
Drewbies.
Drew Brees.
Drewbies.
Who knew he was in a movie?
And welcome back, Todd. Yeah, thanks, Todd. Seaton just brought something to my attention. Closed caption is a tricky thing. Last Friday, I said, I want to talk about Drew Brees. And closed caption had something other than Drew Brees on the screen.
It was the word boobies. Dan.
Yes.
Yeah.
It said, I
want
want
to comment on boobies.
I want to comment on boobies. And that was the closed caption there. You imagine it's somebody who's watching, they're going, I'd like to, and I'm so serious when I'm talking about this, and they're probably going, oh my God, wait, oh, he looks really serious.
Yeah, a buddy of mine sent it to me. He's like, what are you guys talking about today?
It's like spell check, that you go, wait, I didn't say that. Spell check, sometimes, that's your best friend. But yeah, I mean, I did want to talk about boobies, but I didn't want to talk about boobies then. I was talking about Drew Brees. Booby Clark, by the way, former running back, Cincinnati Bengals. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell made a strong statement on Friday night. He said the NFL was wrong not to let its players protest in the past. He did not invoke the name Colin Kaepernick. Now, for some people, Goodell hit the right notes. Others said it was too little too late. Others just don't agree with this sentiment. Words matter, especially now, so it's not wise to dismiss the commissioner's comments, but their true meaning will be revealed by the league's actions in the coming weeks, coming months, and coming years. When football does return, there's a pretty good chance you're going to have a lot of players who are going to protest. Future Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson already said that he would take a knee during the national anthem. We'll see how the NFL reacts after this offseason. Kaepernick first protested the anthem in 2016. It was during the anthem, not protesting the anthem itself. NFL had trouble coming up with a consistent plan back then. Felt like the owners were in, they were out, they were sort of on the fence. They weren't sure what the plan was going to be. In just a couple of months, though, we're going to find out just how much their stance has changed on topics that have deeply divided our nation. The commissioner's statement is just the beginning of a new chapter in an NFL storyline that everyone is going to be watching very closely. Here is the commissioner, Roger Goodell, his statement that he unleashed on Friday afternoon.
It has been a difficult time for our country, in particular, Black people in our country. First, my condolences to the families of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and all the families who have endured police brutality. We, the National Football League, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of Black people. We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. We, the National Football League, believe Black lives matter. I personally protest with you and want to be part of the much needed change in this country. Without Black players, there would be no National Football League. And the protests around the country are emblematic of the centuries of silence, inequality, and oppression of Black players, coaches, fans, and staff. We are listening. I am listening. And I will be reaching out to players who have raised their voices and others on how we can improve and go forward for a better and more united NFL family.
That's the commissioner on Friday late afternoon. The president of the United States at 11:54 East Coast time last night, he sent out a tweet. Could it be even remotely possible that in Roger Goodell's rather interesting statement of peace and reconciliation, he was intimating that it would now be okay for the players to kneel in capital letters, or not to stand for the national anthem, thereby disrespecting our country and our flag. So that's from the president late last night. A lot of reaction to this. I do think that this is a reaction by the commissioner in the NFL to Drew Brees saying, hey, I apologize. This wasn't about a protest of the anthem. It was a protest during the anthem. Yahoo's Dan Wetzel had a column that said, if this is real, then it's a clear sign the NFL believes public sentiment on the issue of anthem protests specifically and social justice in general has dramatically shifted. This isn't the NFL leading. The NFL never leads. This is the NFL following where it believes the money will be, if not immediately, then over the next couple of decades. Flags, American or otherwise, tend to show which way the wind is blowing. That's from Dan Wetzel. Let's bring in Peter King, NBCSports.com. Football Morning in America, must read every Monday morning. His column, Anger, Apologies, and Videos Gone Viral Inside the 3 days that sparked major shift in the NFL. Peter, how are we?
Dan, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Well, I'm trying to sort this out with what has transpired here over the last 4 or 5 days with the NFL, starting, I guess, with Drew Brees' apology, subsequent apology, and then another apology, the commissioner then putting out the video, and then the president tweeting last night. So where do you think the dust is settled so far here on Monday morning before 10 a.m.?
We'll see. Right now, basically, I think the biggest thing about what happened in the last few days is that Roger Goodell, who, despite what people think, does listen to people, doesn't always act on what people close to him say. But Roger Goodell listened. He listened to the voices of 20 players led by Michael Thomas. He listened to some rogue employees. And it wasn't just Brendan Minter, the 27-year-old social media video producer, sitting in his apartment in L.A. and working at his kitchen table and putting together one of the most impactful player videos we've ever seen, that already in 4 days got 21 million views across all kinds of platforms. It isn't just that. It's also the fact that, Dan, when Roger Goodell had a town hall last Friday, an employee who's been with the NFL for 4 months, a guy named Jarek Walker, a former walk-on football player at BC, basically appealed to the commissioner to, let's be the sport we were on 9/11 when we helped America come out of it. Let's be the sport we were in Katrina when we helped America get well. We're not that sport right now. And I think that really hit Roger Goodell, that a 31-year-old Black employee, along with many other Black employees on Zoom video conferences, a lot like the one we're having right now, basically said, we are not being heard and you are not listening to your players. And Michael Thomas, Tyrann Mathieu, and the others Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. looked right at Roger Goodell and said, "You have to listen to us," and he did.
The commissioner puts out a statement, and I think you were reporting that the owners didn't know that he was putting out this statement. We haven't heard from the owners yet. Is that correct, Pete?
No, I have not read anything. I did not report that, Dan. I think someone else did. I don't know who it was, but honestly, at this point, it isn't that doesn't matter. But Roger Goodell was not going to get on the phone with 32 owners and say, "Hey, what do you think? I'm thinking of doing this."
Okay.
He had to do this. There's no question about it. The big question now, as I posed in my column, is really what's next? What are the owners going to do? What's Jerry Jones going to do? You know what happened the last time when there was a threat for people kneeling. There was an implicit, an implied, statement from Jones, and implied. He never said this directly, but don't you dare kneel on the sidelines of my stadium. So now we're going to have to see. And look, I think there's no question that players are going to kneel, perhaps en masse, this fall at games. I mean, there's 3 months between now and opening day. So we'll see what happens. A lot could happen. But I think what has happened in the last few days is that the players have flexed their muscles and the NFL listened.
Well, we got 6 weeks to training camp, whatever training camp's going to look like. And I was reading Mark Maskey in the Washington Post saying that there's a little bit more sentiment or feel. I'm paraphrasing here of maybe Colin Kaepernick gets a true chance now. Have you heard anything about anybody maybe opening their doors to Colin Kaepernick here?
No, it wouldn't shock me, but I don't expect it to happen. And I don't know. I all I can do is have a gut feeling on this, Dan. If you were Colin Kaepernick and got the opportunity to be Jameis Winston or to be Andy Dalton and to go somewhere and be a backup, no one right now is going to hand Colin Kaepernick a starting job.
Yeah.
If you had a chance to go somewhere and be a backup and probably sit around for the majority of the year, do you want to do that? And maybe he will want to do that. And maybe he'll do it to make a point. But I doubt it would happen, but I have no information either way on it.
I said the same thing about 15 minutes ago. I just can't imagine that sort of all this clout he's built up as a voice or his actions, and then you go in and you're a backup quarterback. It feels like he's more powerful in what he wants by not being a backup quarterback in the NFL.
Dan, the CEO of Twitter just handed him a check for $3 million to continue his work to educate young people in his Know Your Rights camps. And somebody else, I forget who, gave him $1 million to do that. So, he's, and again, I have not talked to Colin Kaepernick in 4 years. So how would I know? But I think it's unlikely that he would take a backup quarterback job in the NFL, but we'll see.
Talking to Peter King, the column is Football Morning in America. Drew Brees' apology. What'd you make of that?
Totally not surprising. He's a team guy. We'll find out how serious he is and whether indeed he's going to stand with his teammates. He says he will. And Dan, as I wrote in my column today, there is no one in the 36 years that I've covered the NFL who has done more for his adopted community than Drew Brees has done for New Orleans. Nobody. It's not even close. So I think everybody's a little bit too quick to throw Drew Brees off the cliff. I think you have to give him a chance. And whatever players think, they're going to think. Okay, but I think you got to give him a chance to make this right.
Let me talk some football here. As of now, the structure of, off-season workouts, I mean, is everything on schedule from what you've learned of this, training camp and the season starting on time?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Alan Sills, the NFL's medical director, the other day, and he said everything right now, as of right now, is on course to happen the way it normally would. Now, 11 teams won't be going away to training camp. All training camps will be held at the home facilities. We'll see what kind of bubble can be built. Will media be able to cover training camps? Will they be the normal kind of training camps that they always have been? Will there be preseason games? And those are the things we just don't know right now. The one thing I thought Sil said this on Adam Schefter's podcast last week. I thought it was a great point. He goes, 3 months ago. I mean, think of us 3 months ago. 3 months ago, you and I were still going out to dinner as normal. And the first game of the regular season is 3 months from this Wednesday. Yeah. So a lot has happened in 3 months, and a lot can happen in the next 3 months. But all you can do is go by what you think right now. And the NFL, I think, in adopting these positions, these new jobs like infection control officers in each organization, every facility is going to be spick and span. The bubbles will be built, and we'll just see how it goes.
What's your biggest question going into this season, football-wise?
Will the disease come back? Will the second wave of the disease ramrod itself into the United States on December 10th and force the NFL to not play football? That's my biggest question. I think they're probably going to start the season. And I think at one point or another, a big star is going to be held out of a game because he tests positive. Maybe there will be 5 of those on one team, and that team can't play this week. But I think the overarching question is, will the second wave of the disease detour the NFL season in week 12, 14, 16?
What do you think the NFL thinks about the month of February, of maybe extending the playoffs or a week before the Super Bowl to get that Super Bowl towards the end of February? Basically, let's own another month. Is that part of the?
I mean, it's logical. It's certainly, they can play the Super Bowl any one of those Sundays in February in Tampa. I'm sure they could probably play it in March too. But, again, those are the kind of things, Dan, that I just think nobody can know right now because, as Anthony Fauci told me a month ago, the disease is going to make these decisions.
Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate all the words in your column. We appreciate your time as well.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Peter King, NBCSports.com, NFL columnist, Football Morning in America. Tommy in Kentucky joins us. Hi, Tom. What do you have for me today?
Well, I tell you what, I don't have a worst. I have 2 bests.
Okay.
Number 1 best, I live in Kentucky, and we finally opened our golf courses up. So, but it's nice to be out and play. My second best is over the weekend, I was browsing around for a new set of clubs, and I was scrolling through the Facebook Marketplace, and I saw a picture of some clubs which appeared to be Callaway. I contacted the woman and I said, "Can you send me a better picture?" Well, she did, and sure enough, it was a whole set of Callaway irons, from 2, all 3 wedges, even a Big Bertha steelhead 3-wood.
I like it.
So I got a complete set of Callaway steelhead clubs for $15. And when I asked her why she was selling them for so cheap, she proceeded to spew out an extreme amount of expletives about her husband. She just wanted them gone out of her house.
Hey, Tommy, stay on hold. I'm going to send you some golf balls. Okay?
Okay, sounds great.
I'm going to. So we'll get the information. Marvin will get your information. I'm going to send you some golf balls. Good for you. Bad for that husband. Probably went, "Where's my clubs?" I don't know. Ain't seen them. I don't know. So we've updated you on the NFL situation. The NBA, it looks like it's full speed ahead by the end of July. Hockey's coming back. Golf's coming back. Everybody's coming back except for Major League Baseball. And, of course, that means we have Tom Verducci on. Tom, when is baseball coming back?
I'd love to just tell you July, Dan. I've been thinking that all along, and purely out of optimism, because right now the rhetoric is terrible. Both sides are really dug in. If you're just taking the temperature of negotiations, you would say there's no agreement here. But I still believe, Dan, that the downside to not playing baseball, especially as you mentioned, all these other sports are up and running, is so enormous. That's the biggest motivator to get a deal done. So I'm still optimistic. It doesn't look like the 4th of July the way owners originally wanted, but I think somewhere along the lines of 60 to 70 games, maybe by the beginning of August.
But the NBA has the luxury of all being self-quarantined in Orlando. You have your basketball courts there. You have the facilities. You'll have testing available. You know, baseball is still, we're not quite sure. Are they going to be in Arizona and Florida? Arizona are their home parks here. Are you going to play East Coast versus East Coast? Like, there's a lot that really has to be sorted out here. And then you have the money aspect here. What is front and center, the biggest hurdle before we have baseball?
It's the money, pure and simple.
Right.
I mean, this is like one of those old-fashioned players, owners, labor disputes. And I think that's why the downside is so big, Dan, that if there is no baseball, it's not because there was this enormous concern about the protocols and the health issues. It's strictly about money. On the players' side, I can tell you this. The players now have found a reason to be galvanized like I have not seen in years. This is not about pensions or service time or some esoteric CBA issue, purely about taking a pay cut. They understand it. They can rally around it. And I think that's why that they're dug in. As far as where they play, you know, listen, I think they're a little bit of a benefit here as opposed to the NBA. They're playing the games outside. From what we know about the spread of the virus, it's a little less risky being outdoors. Where they play, it's looking like it's going to be in major league ballparks. You know, the state of Texas is saying you can have 50% capacity. Some places are saying, forget it, you're not going to count on anybody being in the ballpark. So it's a local issue in terms of who's going to be there, but they are planning to play mostly empty ballparks, major league stadiums.
What will baseball look like when it comes back?
Listen, I'm like a lot of people. I think I'll take it any way I can get it. But when you think about the fact that they're putting in 30-man rosters with 15-man pitching staffs after a 3-week spring training, I don't want to say glorified spring training, but the games will be heavy in pitching changes and less offense, which are two things we don't want as fans, right? I mean, we'll have to take what we can get. But when baseball came back in 81, remember that was the 2-month strike. They started in August. Rosters remained at 25. So baseball pretty much looked the same. Offense went slightly up in the month of August of 81. But if you're giving managers 15-man pitching staffs and starting pitchers are not stretched out to pitch even their usual 5 or 6 innings, you're looking at more pitching changes, less offense.
Does Jacob deGrom win the Cy Young with a 5-3 record?
I guess it depends on his ERA, right? I mean, Listen, we're not going to get a quote-unquote legitimate season. We're not going to get a quote-unquote legitimate champion. But if I could again go back to 81, you had 4 teams earn a playoff spot. Remember, that was a split season year. 4 teams got into the playoffs by playing only 53 games. There was a world champion there. You had a playoff system. All right, it wasn't the usual 162 and everything we're traditionally used to, but it still worked. I mean, I'll take it. And again, is there an asterisk? You know, maybe at least mentally there is, but somebody's going to win the Cy Young. Somebody's going to be the MVP.
Baseball had such a golden opportunity here. Like, you could have monopolized summer. And I know that there's health issues, but really health is not first and foremost here. I know Blake Snell said this. It's always about money. It's going to be about money. If I gave baseball a do-over through this, Tom, 2 months ago, I give the commissioner and Tony Clark, the head of the Players Association, a do-over. What would you do over?
Well, I think you start the negotiations from a closer vantage point, because remember, owners first came in and floated the idea of a revenue sharing plan, right? A 50-50 split. Well, that's essentially a salary cap. And anybody who's been around baseball for 5 minutes, never mind the last 50 years, knows that that's a non-starter. That was not a good place to start. Then they came back with this sliding pay cut thing where Mike Trout, Garrett Cole, biggest stars in the game, would take the biggest pay cuts. Well, that's not going to do it with the players, because the union is a top-down driven organization. The players are the ones, the stars of the game, who set the salary standards. They have the loudest voice, even if it's a minority of the rank and file. So that kind of ticked off the Stars and their agents, especially the game. So that kind of got things off in a wrong spot there, Dan. And I think we've lost time because of that. But you're absolutely right. There was an opportunity here. I looked at 4th of July weekend.
Yeah.
Cubs are playing the Cardinals. Yankees are playing the Red Sox. Dodgers are playing the Giants. We're starting to move about outdoors. Baseball's got the advantage of being sort of episodic, right? It's with us every day, unlike the other sports are more event-oriented. And being part of that, quote, normalizing of routines in America, baseball would be a big part of that. Still got a chance to do that, but it had the platform to itself by being the first ones back. Now we don't know.
I know we're optimistic. We want to be optimistic, but how close are we to the worst case scenario here, Tom, that there is no baseball this summer?
I don't know what the percentage is, Dan, but it's a possibility. And again, I think that should scare the pants off the players and the owners, because you're talking about a sport, the last 7 years, attendance has declined every year. You cannot go 17 months without playing a Major League Baseball game in this day and age where baseball is at. Now, the last shutdown was 94, 95, right? That's a long time ago. That's a generation ago, Dan. And since then, we have MMA. The NFL is bigger. The NBA is bigger. There's so many more entertainment opportunities for people out there. People will be out of the habit of baseball, and don't underestimate the power of habit.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a possibility. But again, I'm going to still be on the side of saying there's going to be a season of some length, I think somewhere around 70. And I say that because there's actually some agreement here. The players say, we want to be paid on a prorated basis. The owners came back and said, okay, we'll do that, but we'll only play 50 games. So now actually philosophically, there is some agreement. To me, it's a matter of finding what that number is here that's palatable to the owners and the players. I'd like to think it's 70. I know it's not that simple of just doing math, but at least philosophically, they can get to some schedule where players are paid on a prorated basis.
Which team or teams would benefit from a shortened season?
This may surprise you. Tampa Bay Rays. I look at that team, and I don't think there's any pitching staff in baseball, Dan, that has better stuff from 1 through 15 than the Rays. And again, I think with an expanded pitching staff and pitchers going 5 innings, depth of quality arms is going to win the day. And I defy even the Dodgers. I don't think can match up 1 through 15 of what the Rays can throw out there. So I think in a 50 to 70 game season, the Tampa Bay Rays are the most dangerous team.
This is all going to be about pitching.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think a lot of it, Dan, too, is how do you get these guys ramped up in time to really hit the ground running once games start? You know, when I talked to Scott Boras about this, because he's got Garrett Cole, he's got Steven Strasburg, he's got Max Scherzer. He actually brought up the idea of just because spring training 2.0 is 3 weeks, why would you put those elite pitchers at $30 million per year on that kind of compressed schedule? Keep them on their regular 4 or 5 week spring training. Maybe they miss a start or two in the quote unquote regular season, but protecting those elite arms may be something that teams have to look at. So listen, these guys have kept their arms moving, but this has been like, in a purgatory state for 3 months for these pitchers. They haven't been really ramping up. They haven't been throwing off a mound. They've been playing catch. It's like January that never ends, preparing for a season. So they'll come back in varying degrees of shape in terms of arm health. And that's something every club is going to have to really, really pay attention to very closely.
I can't imagine what your day is like. No matter where you go, you probably get the same question. Hey, when's baseball coming back? Like as if you're the gatekeeper here and you decide when baseball is coming back.
Yeah, but listen, I understand it. I kind of asked myself that question too, because there's a lot of frustration, Dan, here, because people want baseball. Listen, we all want all sports, right? We want as much normalcy as we can. But I think people have figured out here that the reason there is no plan for baseball right now is simply money. And maybe that's unfair to boil it down that way, but baseball, I think, has to be aware that if there is no baseball, as I said, people are not just out of the habit of baseball, they will resent baseball, man, because it will be because we didn't have games. It was only because they couldn't agree about money.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we'll end it there. Tom, great to talk to you again. Get baseball back, okay? Come on.
When will we have it back?
I don't know.
I'll do my
Thank
best.
you, Tom. Tom Verducci Sports Illustrated senior baseball writer and MLB network analyst. Let's go around the room. What we learned. Todd, what did you... No, you weren't here for a full show, so you don't get to do it. McLovin?
Todd Verducci says baseball will have more pitching change, less as offense.
Oh, I know. Boy, that sounds exciting. More pitching changes, less hitting. Seton.
Yeah, Verducci got us fired up for baseball, huh?
Paulie.
Ted Kluszewski, guns out.
What we learned brought to you by LegalZoom. No matter what happens, you want to make sure your loved ones are taken care of. That's why LegalZoom has made it easy to set up the right estate plan without leaving your home. Take care of your family today. The right estate plan at LegalZoom.com. We'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us here on The Dan Patrick Show.